Hey people, how are you? Hope you're well. I had a very cool day today. I actually did this lecture that I told you I was going to do with Seattle Community College, the film department where my brother Bliss runs the department, and it was awesome. I had a really good time. It was really fun to basically what I did was I talked about um, I talked about navigating a creative career and sort of came at it from the way that I've come at it, which has been very much a sort of follow your bliss approach in the Joseph Campbell sense of like, follow what you love, see what that brings for you, letting oneself um, resonate with the things in our heart that are calling to us. It's such an important thing to remember. And I almost feel like, that was like the hip cliche in the 90s was follow your bliss. But it becomes almost ever more relevant as we become, as the culture evolves and social media evolves, and we sort of move into this a new era in a way of I talked a little bit about how how our attention has been essentially turned into a commodity. What we do with our attention is now a valuable commodity to a lot of big tech companies that are making a ton of money off of predicting and somewhat manipulating our behavior. And in that context, connecting with the part of ourselves that is truly being our inner guidance system, that internal guidance system that moves us to travel in the direction of our soul's calling, for lack of a better word, not to put it too piously, but like I think it's nothing less than that in a lot of ways. It's really a listening to the deepest part of ourselves. And today I just kind of like riffed on that idea in a number of different ways, and I came at it from a couple different angles and sort of unpacked it a little bit within the various disciplines and the various like modes that I've explored in my own creative work. And I just had a really great time. And I think, it was a Zoom call, so I could see some of their faces. They seemed to be responding really positively. The students did. Hard to know what was happening. Like I haven't gotten any feedback on it yet, but I'm excited to hear if there is some feedback. I'd be curious to hear how it was for people, because I know it was out of their typical ballpark. It wasn't what they usually get as far as like guest lecturers, because I'm not a film person, I'm not a designer. I've had a totally different kind of life than they are likely to have, because I pursued music primarily. But there are these universal principles of creativity, universal principles of life that I think all of us share, and that that's what I was trying to zoom into today and bring out and just kind of universalize in some ways. So I loved it. It was really fun, and I have to say, even though I didn't really interact with them, something I know about myself is I had this experience in Santa Fe too. I tend to resonate really well with college age students. Something about college age students where they're basically adults, but they're like unformed adults. They're adults with all the cognitive function and all the like structure of an adult human, but none of the experience and none of the experience of adults. They lack the experience of adults. They lack the long-term view and the long-term experience that adults have, that you have when you get to be 35 or 40 or older. But they also have the enthusiasm of younger people, like high school kids. They retain some of that enthusiasm. So it's just I just find that age to be a really fertile age to work with, because they're hungry for new information. They're dying to learn stuff. They're capable of understanding everything you say or present them with. You never have to simplify things too much in order to communicate with them. And they'll dive in with the energy of children, which is fantastic, because that's exactly what you want. You want them to dive and be in discovery mode, play. They want to be in play. I think I've mentioned this on one of my other posts, but Brian Swimme, this fantastic writer, wrote a book called The Universe is a Green Dragon, and he talks about how one of the defining feature, I think, or one of the defining features, I forget how he puts it, but one of the prime defining features of human beings as a species is that we play throughout our entire life. We play all the way from the time we're born until the day we die. We have the impulse to play. No other species does that. Other species play. There's obviously various evolutionary functions to play, but they stop somewhere along the way. When they're fully formed, they stop. And humans, I think we observe a similar phenomenon of and I was reading this recently about neuroplasticity and how the brain gets to a certain point and then it shuts down a lot of the possibilities that it has been holding open during our younger years, because I suppose it's evolutionarily to our advantage to shut those possibilities down and narrow the scope of our experimentation. Now, I think that in a lot of ways, humans nowadays, and especially conscious humans who are really doing some inner work, we're kind of rebelling against that. It's like we're going, no, don't shut down my possibilities. I want that openness. I want that sense of possibility. I want that feeling of of anything can happen. And I have to say, I do remember when I was younger, I do remember that there is a stress involved in holding that. There is a kind of there's a stress involved in that much being undetermined in our psyche and in our perception of reality. But of course we get older and those things narrow down, and then we long for the days when it was all so open and everything seemed possible. And I think that's kind of like the conundrum of right now, is we're gaining more and more the capacity to actually keep those channels open. And that's, for me, I mean, meditation and doing inner work and recognizing patterns, just the capacity to recognize patterns in ourselves, to let those patterns go, to adopt new patterns. I mean, I go on and on about this in piano because we're constantly doing that work, but that's really what we crave nowadays. And I think maybe that's also why I'm inspired by college kids, is because they manifest that very easily. They have all the openness and all the possibility of very young people, but also enough structure in place that they can be adults and they can take on adult information in a way that high school kids can get pretty close, but they sometimes can't get all the way there. Depending on the student, of course. They're incredibly precocious high school kids who are way beyond anything. There's exceptions to every rule, but I think I just had the experience today of really feeling like, oh, this is fun. Like, I remember working with college kids. I did several years of work in Santa Fe at a college, and I just remember really enjoying that age group and being inspired by what I could do with them, what we could manifest together. So it's really fun. I think that's where I am today, people. I know that was kind of a rambling post, but I think the that dichotomy between folly or bliss and where we are as a culture in terms of our attention, what we do with our attention being a really conscious choice. That was definitely the theme of the day, keeping that sense that the inner voice is what's guiding us and not just the next sort of attention grabbing thing getting to have our attention. Like having some ownership over our attention feels like a very important thing to keep in mind and to cultivate. So that's where I am, people. Thanks for watching. Love you all. Appreciate you so much. I will see you very soon.